Welcome everyone to this Future-Proof Container Terminals episode. Today we got a really interesting guest, Mr. Carlos Urriola, and I will define why interesting is not only due to his background, but also due to his more than 40 years of experiences in the maritime industry. And I got a list over here of a little short list of his journey, starting as different roles in the National Port Authority of Panama, then different roles for Manzanillo International Terminal, well known as MIT, as a vice president of marketing and also as a general manager. And at the same time, multiple roles as president of the American Chamber of Commerce of Panama, president of the Caribbean Shipping Association, and also president of the Maritime Chamber of Panama, and currently president for SSA Marine International, leading multiple terminals in all the Latin American region. And especially these days, Mr. Urriola, it's really interesting for us to hear your thoughts about this automation journey, on this before and after the pandemic, and all these environmental legislations that are increasing more and more. So with that being said, welcome to the virtual stage.
Chris, thank you for that invitation. Look like a long journey since 1979 when we started this business. Looking to a 4,400 TEU vessel was like, wow, this is the biggest vessel that we can get. We didn't have a expanded canal. We didn't have a 23,000 TEU vessel and all this reality, including the expanded Panama Canal. I think that this business is about, I will always compare as a bamboo tree. You need to be strong, but you need to be flexible. And if you need to bend with the wind, you will have to do it. And the most important thing is that you need to understand you need to continue maintaining your strength in a port.
So, Mr. Urriola, before starting the session, I always like to ask this question, and I would like to hear your thoughts about this one. So, how would you describe terminal operations in one word?
If you ask me for a word that defines ports, for me, it's flexibility. This business has changed so much, especially now, and this has been a typical example the last year, when vessels, there's no bare windows anymore, there's no pro forma, there's no schedule. Vessels are waiting in line 8-9 days to be unloaded. Empty containers are being left because they have to cut and run. So at the end, the flexibility of a port is really what defines this business. You are able to adjust. And that way of adjusting and the faster way you adapt it, in my opinion, is a key now in how to be successful in this business. And you have to adjust it, take into consideration that port not only interface with ships, it interface with trucks, it interface with port authorities, it interface with governments, quarantine, customs. So at the end, you have to be careful, because no matter what, the major or the fastest speed you have in the system is dominated by the slowest speed of one of the components. So at the end, I think what have changed is the amount of speed that you put in the system. And that's where automation comes, because you are able to do the same thing faster and faster with less mistakes. And at the same time, you need to be green. So you need to look into the environment at the same time you're doing this adjustment. So how you balance all this is really the biggest challenge that I see coming in the next year, because rates normally don't go up. So that's one of the things that I haven't seen. I've seen rates just going down, at least on the terminal operator. I don't know about, it doesn't look it's the same way on the shipping side, but at least on the port side, it's that way. But all I can tell you after so many years in the business is about flexibility and being able to survive and adapt to change.
I really like this bamboo concept, and I'm totally agree with you that the terminals need to be flexible to be able to thrive among these uncertain times. And I am also quite convinced that you tried this concept during the pandemic, because it totally not only changed our way of working, but it also changed our way of living. And it's quite interesting how you should be flexible, not only on the technology level, but also at the people and process level. But I would like to hear from you, for many terminals, there was a before and after the pandemic. So could you share a little bit more, some challenge you faced during the pandemic, and probably some positive aspects also generated due to the pandemic?
Well, not only was the port, as I said, port interact with a community, and every country, every government has its own regulations. So there was not something that you can say that this applied to this country will apply to the other country. But one of the things, we were very fortunate, really very lucky that this system didn't stop before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now that we are, in my opinion, we still are in pandemic. We were able to take care of our people. And when I say people, I also want to make a point here that we should never forget the people, the crew on the vessels. In my opinion, they've been the guys that really have kept the system working. Because if the ships were not able to sail, we would not be able to work them. So that's something that we have to honor these people and never forget that they keep the train moving. But in our case, we were able to protect our people, vaccinate our people, keep a lot of measures. And also remember, there's a big thing about our business. We keep, in general, social distance, because when the gang is on board, it's really keeping distance. When they are they normally are one per equipment, if there is somebody on the equipment. And also, all you have to be careful is because port workers are very gregarious, so they tend to, when they're going to have lunch, they want to get together. So, this is something that anybody that been in the waterfront understand that part. So we needed to protect them. And the good thing is that the system has been running for the whole pandemic. And we're very proud, especially with all the different rules, every different quarantine procedures. So this has been a very successful area. We have lost some people in the situation, during this situation, but also we didn't care only about the people that work for us. We care about the family, and I think we were not the only ones doing this. I think every port was doing the same thing, and until now we continue. Not one single port in Latin America was closed during this when the pandemic was at a higher point. We continue operating. Resilience of our people and the system prove that ports are very essential. Because remember, for the first time, people started really looking of the role of the ports in the supply chain, and the role of the shipping business in the supply chain. When they saw for the first time, I think people found out that there was a vessel, that Evergreen has all these vessels that first name began with Ever. And, everybody learned the name for good or for bad of Ever Given. And they start understanding what we do in the supply chain. So I think that one of the things that demonstrates is that the maritime business has come out with high marks on doing this pandemic. And that's something good that came out of this. The role, how important is the work of the port workers, the crew on board the vessels, the shipping line, the truckers. Everything had shown that it's very important for business to continue running.
Yeah, really, really interesting this point about people. And I always like to ask this question, like, which comes first, people or technology?
I think I have no doubt it's people first, followed by technology. And in the middle, I put the other P, people, process, and technology. Because one of the things that also we have learned is that we discovered during this time that there was way to stream process. people tend to jump from people to technology and forget the process, and then they figure out why the hell it's not working. We have first to look to process. There were so many things that were automated during this time, and nothing has to do with robots or big equipment or expensive machines. It was just basically government looking to how can I streamline, because I don't want to have more people there. How can I clear a container? Custom can clear a container. How can I receive a payment now online when normally there will be a guy there with a lot of stamps putting on paper? So all these things that happen, in my opinion, were automatization of process. So we have to be careful, because as we were discussing before, automation doesn't mean an equipment without an operator. Automatization needs to streamline the process in a way that there's less intervention of potential mistakes, and especially something that is done every time in the same way. So we all look to, and I think the biggest role has been on the government side, because we oblige them to do this, look to the process. So basically for me, it's people first with process that leads to technology. It's not technology first, people, because the process part, there's always a more faster way or more optimal way to do a process. And then once you figure it out, you could say, well, then I go on and go for automatization fully, or I do anything. And you guys know much better, because if not, you found that many of the process that goes the other way and inverse the factor, they go for failure. And then it's very difficult to try to dig a process when you figure it out, shit, I never thought that I could do it this way. So for me, automatization is anything that can be done repeatedly, that you put it in a way to avoid doing mistakes, and that you can do it in a faster way.
Yeah, really, really interesting. You touch a lot of interesting topics here that, once you think about automation, normally people mix the equipment automation and process automation. And there is also a lot of opportunity, especially in the Latin American part, to improve the process automation. But, I am also involved in different, with different customers and different countries in the region. And, one of the main challenges is that, just as you mentioned, the terminal is just a little link of the whole supply chain. And sometimes you can automate, but within your terminal. But what about the whole connection between port authorities, shipping lines, and all the other stakeholders? So there is quite a room for opportunity here in the region of Latin America. And I think we're also reaching at a closing. I am aware that you're quite busy these days, and I would like to finalize the session with two questions. The first one, what will be your advice for the Latin American colleagues that are willing to invest in this type of technologies? And the second question, I had been following your latest interviews, and I really like a phrase you mentioned, that over the years you have been making a path for future generations, and I would like to hear your advice for the future leaders in the region.
Well, on the first one is that, as you put it this way, you have to look to the port as a system, supply chain system, and don't look at it as an isolated system. So that's the first mistake. It doesn't make you any different if you move 30 moves per hour on the ship side, and there's a custom guy on the way out with a manual typewriter that takes 20 minutes to clear one container. So you have to think that you have to do the whole system, and that's one of the things that fail, because then you figure out you need more space, but the system, you don't take the speed of how the different process. As I said, the slowest of the process is the one that domains the speed of the system. So you have to look to the whole process. Second, you need to make sure that the government is part of this automation process, because if not, you get the same problem. So So governments are very important, but I think we are now in a good position because the governments have reacted. Almost all the governments in Latin America are thinking different from what they think before the pandemic. So I think that the advice, go there, but make sure you go there looking to the German call it the Weltanschauung or the holistic approach. You have to look to the whole thing. I'm a system engineer and you're an industrial system engineer, and you have to look to the overall picture. So that's my big advice. And don't hire only a consultant for the equipment, and hire the whole thing. Make sure he really can control the speed of the system. And then the other thing, I've been in the business in '79. This business is something, no matter where you are, it's all about passion. You have to love what you're doing. This is like when shipping business or maritime business is like, remember that girl that you were in love when you were in high school and she never pays attention? Well, that's shipping. No matter, but you continue loving it because she never said yes to you. So shipping is about that type of passion. You need to live it. And every day you have to rediscover. And in Spanish, we said impossible is synonymous of something that you haven't tried to change. So for the new generations, I think they have to look to the overall picture. Never forget about people, no matter how much automatization you do. The second one, remember, our business is to move commerce that by accident come by ships. But we are part of the trade, so see how the economy factors are. So for the new generation, I would say you need to try to make yourself a better human being, because this business is about you touch people everywhere in different ways, by sending a sneaker, by sending medicine, by sending a mask, So at the end, you really are a key component. And also, what we need to do is basically, we need to study and we need to find ways to do it better every day. Every day, for somebody which wake up early, there's somebody that doesn't sleep. We're supposed to be the guys that doesn't sleep.
That's right, 24/7 operations. I really appreciate your time, Mr. Urriola, and really awesome advice, not only to our worldwide colleagues, also to our colleagues in the region and the future generations of leaders that will be leading this business. So I really appreciate this opportunity and hope you can join us in future opportunities.
Perfect, no problem.
So hope you like this episode. I feel really honored, because it's not always the case that you got the chance to talk with someone with more than 40 years of experience in the maritime industry. Really interesting thoughts regarding how we should be, or the terminals should be as a Bamboo, quite flexible to be able to adapt not only to the happy day seasons, but also to uncertain times. I really also like this approach. Like, yes, we should focus first on people, process, and technology, and somehow create a balance between those three to success in different, not only process automation, but also, different type of projects, especially on the Latin American region. Quite interesting also his thoughts regarding how you should be able to handle this approach. He mentioned quite many times that the weakest link in the whole supply chain will be the one commanding the whole speed. So it's really interesting, this approach, because he mentioned quite many times that we need to have this holistic point of view, especially when evaluating not only equipment, but also process automation, and involving the whole stakeholders on these type of projects. Basically, again, the terminal is just a link from the whole supply chain. So really interesting thoughts. Hope he can join us in a future session. And if you like this content, please share, comment, and I would like to hear your thoughts, especially my colleagues from the Latin American regions, on what they are currently facing, how they are evaluating these different type of technologies, especially the role of the leadership they need to have on their terminal for this type of implementation and technology. So drop your comments below and keep tuned for the next episode.